A hunter in the snow. The Alaskan night was silent, the snow absorbing sound like a thick frozen blanket. But Jack Stone wasn't fooled. Silence wasn't safety. It was the calm before something broke. And something was very wrong with this mountain. He crouched low beneath a frost-bitten spruce, his breath slow and controlled. His winter camouflage suit shimmered in whites and grays, blending perfectly into the snowy forest. 15 years in Special Forces had taught Jack many things, but above all, it had taught him to trust his instincts. And every nerve in his body screamed the same thing now. He was being watched. The mission was supposed to be routine. Investigate abnormal electromagnetic signals detected by a weather satellite. Probably Russian, maybe Chinese. That's what Command had told him. But Jack had seen strange tech before cutting-edge experimental fields during Black Ops missions. And this wasn't human. It didn't even feel like Earth. As he pressed forward through knee-deep snow, his gear began to fail. First, the radio, total silence, no static. Then his compass spun in lazy, useless circles. Even his battery-powered thermal scope fizzled into darkness. Jack exhaled through his nose, a grim smile curling on his lips. Dead zones don't form in perfect circles by accident, he muttered. He switched to the old ways. A steel compass, a notepad, his senses. The air was warmer than it should have been by a few degrees, just enough to make the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The snow melted unevenly, creating odd geometric shapes along the ridgeline. He slowed his pace, every step deliberate, and then he saw it. Or rather, he saw through it. Just ahead, the forest shimmered like heat rising from asphalt, but the temperature was well below zero. Jack narrowed his eyes. No way in hell that was a natural mirage. He pulled out his notebook and began sketching the disturbance. The boundary shimmered faintly like a rip in reality. A tremor ran beneath his boots. Not an earthquake, not exactly. The snow and earth beneath him gave way, opening like a mouth. Jack instinctively launched himself sideways into a roll, but it wasn't fast enough. The ground vanished beneath him, revealing something that should never have existed. A metallic chamber, a massive room pulsing with unnatural purple light. It hummed alive. Jack fell, but not far. A beam of energy caught him midair, suspending his body in an anti-gravity field. His weapons were still strapped to him, rifle, sidearm, blade, but he couldn't move. Not yet. The field held him like a fly in amber. He didn't panic. Instead, he analyzed. Ceiling height, chamber depth, surface materials, weapon positions. This wasn't the first time Jack Stone had been caught in someone else's trap. But this time it wasn't a cartel, a terrorist cell, or rogue nation. This was something else entirely. From the far side of the room, movement. Tall, slender figures with smooth gray skin stepped into view. Their heads were elongated eyes, large and silver. The leader walked slowly, almost regally, around Jack's suspended form. A hovering orb beside him recorded everything. Remarkable, the creature said, voice melodic but cold. He detected our cloaking field. Primitive senses, yet effective fieldcraft. He reached out toward Jack's rifle, a long, six-fingered hand stretching to examine the weapon. Jack spoke first. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. The aliens froze. Translation systems caught up a moment later, but tone didn't need translation. A warning was a warning in any language. The tall one, clearly the leader, retracted his hand. Slowly, Jack's eyes met his. No fear, no awe, just calm, calculating presence. Something about it unsettled the alien. I am First Observer Gray, he said to the orb. Not to Jack. Subject displays unprecedented behavioral stability for a level 3 species. Initiate standard containment protocols. Double security. I suspect this one may be different. The chamber pulsed with light as robotic arms slid from hidden panels in the walls. Jack didn't flinch. He smiled. They thought he was captured. They thought wrong. Because they didn't understand humans. Not yet. The unbreakable man. The room was bright, too bright. Sterile white light bathed the chamber, bouncing off polished alien surfaces and casting no shadows. Jack sat on a metallic examination table in the center of the room, hands resting casually on his knees. His posture was relaxed, almost meditative, but his eyes moved constantly, scanning every detail. Cameras 6 total, vents 2, emergency exits, none that were visible, but the walls weren't solid. They pulsed faintly like living tissue over hidden mechanisms. He'd been here for 3 days. No sun, no clock, but Jack knew how to track time. He could feel it in his body's circadian rhythms, heart rate, metabolic lag. He wasn't just enduring captivity. He was calibrating to it. First observer, Gray stood behind a transparent barrier speaking softly into his floating recorder. Subject remains unnaturally calm, no attempts to escape, minimal emotional fluctuation. This is highly irregular. The first test had been simple. Pain. They'd strapped him down, applied pressure devices to his nerves, and monitored his reactions. Most species screamed within seconds. Many passed out. Others tried to bargain. "Jack," he told jokes. "How many scientists does it take to study a human?" he'd asked as the voltage increased. "Apparently all of you, since none of you are doing a very good job." Then he laughed while the machines pumped pain through every nerve in his body. And when he was done laughing, he bit down and endured. Not because he was immune, but because he wanted them to see humans didn't break easy. Now it was a new day, new test. A tall alien in a sterile white coat approached him holding what looked like a sleek silver collar. Jack raised an eyebrow. "That's a nice necklace," he said dryly, "but I usually prefer dinner first." The technician ignored the sarcasm. The collar snapped shut around Jack's neck with a soft click. He felt it instantly, an invisible force pressing down on his shoulders, bending his spine slightly. "Increasing gravity simulation to 3 times Earth standard," the alien announced. Jack grunted but didn't move. The pressure grew 4 times, 5 times. At 6 times Earth gravity, Jack finally slid off the table. But instead of collapsing, he turned the fall into a crouch, one knee down, palms steadying himself on the floor. He looked up. "Nice trick. You got anything heavier?" Gray frowned. He stepped forward, studying the human more closely. "Muscle density and skeletal durability significantly exceed expected parameters," he muttered. More tests followed. They lowered oxygen levels. Jack slowed his breathing, conserving strength. They raised ambient temperature to unbearable levels. Jack stripped off his top layer, tied it around his waist, and sat calmly on the floor like a yogi in a sauna. They played looping images designed to trigger fear visuals that had caused mental breakdowns in dozens of species. "Jack," he watched, then said, "Your horror movies need better writers." They brought in a comparative subject, a brutish alien warrior with natural armor and an aggressive temperament. They placed him across the room in a mirrored cell. The creature looked terrified. Jack waved. "Hey, big guy, food here's crap, huh?" The alien blinked, then backed away into the corner, clearly more afraid of Jack than of the captors. Gray was beginning to lose composure. "The behavioral matrix is nonsensical," he said to his staff. "He responds to lethal stimuli with sarcasm. Shows no fear, treats containment like entertainment." A technician pulled up brain scans. "Sir, you'll want to see this." Neural activity lit up the screen regions associated with pain, yes, but also with memory recall, puzzle solving, even pleasure. "He's learning," the technician said, "during every test, every second." Gray stepped back. For the first time in his long career, he felt something close to fear. Not of violence, not of escape, but of intellect. Jack wasn't a specimen. He was a tactician, a predator biding his time. Behind the barrier, Jack looked up and locked eyes with Gray. Then he winked. The man who fights in the dark. Jackstone never wasted time. He didn't pace his cell or scream into the walls like the other test subjects they paraded before him. He watched. He counted. He memorized. 26 steps from cot to wall, 5 seconds between security drone passes, 12 unique sound cues from the observation deck above. He wasn't waiting for rescue. He was planning a war. Inside the testing chamber, the lights dimmed for calibration. The aliens thought it would help them better observe stress responses. It only made Jack smile. Darkness. Darkness was home. 2 days ago, during a simulated survival test, he had been placed in a hostile environment filled with primitive resources: sticks, rocks, metal debris. Other species typically huddled in fear. Jack. He built a fire, a spear, and a signal mirror out of a cracked surveillance drone. They thought they were measuring endurance. He was scouting their design patterns. And now he was ready. The next test began with mechanical arms descending from the ceiling, each bristling with instruments of pain. Clamps, syringes, saws, he'd seen this circus before. The aliens thought escalation would break him. It did, but not in the way they expected. Jack moved just as the first arm reached for his face. His hand shot up not to block it, but to grab it. The observers gasped. No subject had ever moved faster than the automation. Then he launched himself upward, using the momentum to flip his body horizontal and wrap his legs around a second arm. He spun, like an acrobat in a zero-gravity war zone. One mechanical limb slammed into another. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. "Security breach in testing chamber 3, a voice cried over the intercom. Jack was just getting started. He twisted mid-air, landing atop a third limb, then leapt to the far wall, rolling across it and landing with a gymnast's grace. First Observer Gray stood behind his barrier, frozen. "Impossible," he whispered. "Increase gravity to maximum." The collar on Jack's neck buzzed with power, but Jack had planned for this. During his morning exercise routines, he'd mapped the electromagnetic field lines around the chamber. He had studied the control panel's placement and made sure he was standing exactly over an exposed junction. The gravity surge came. Jack let himself fall fast and hard, slamming directly onto the junction. The impact sent a surge through the system. The collar sparked, shorted. The chamber lights flickered. A split second. That's all he needed. Jack rolled to his feet, snatched up a broken chunk of robotic arm, and sprinted toward the barrier. They'd never restrained his arms or legs, just relied on their tech. Big mistake. He reached the alien input terminal next to the barrier. The six-fingered control layout was confusing to anyone who hadn't spent 5 days watching it operated from across a glass wall. Jack's fingers danced. The barrier dropped. The aliens never saw what hit them. He moved like a thunderclap wrapped in flesh. No wasted motion, just precise destruction. A guard lunged. Jack dropped him with a palm strike to the trachea. Another tried to draw a weapon. Jack kicked the table into his chest, snatched the gun, and used it to knock out a third. No killing. Not yet. Every movement was designed not just to win, but to send a message. "You tested the wrong species." "Fascinating application of kinetic force," Jack said aloud, mimicking Gray's scientific tone as he disabled another guard with a well-placed elbow. The observation deck lights cut out. Gray ordered full lockdown. Energy weapons ignited, painting the room in neon flashes. But the humans had something aliens had long since evolved beyond. They knew how to fight in the dark. Jack moved between shadows, ducking behind alien tables, yanking wires from exposed walls. He found a medical scanner, hurled it at the ceiling, smashing the main light array. More darkness. He didn't need to see. He remembered. They had trained him for this. Caves in Afghanistan, bunkers in Somalia, submerged ruins in the Pacific. His voice echoed through the darkness. Subject appears to be demonstrating superior tactical adaptation. Bodies hit the floor one by one. By the time emergency lights flickered on, Jack stood alone, bloodied but upright in the center of the room, surrounded by groaning guards. He walked to the central console and began accessing files. Security logs, prisoner manifests, facility schematics. Gray, still watching from the corner, stepped back trembling. "You studied us," he whispered. "All this time, you were learning our movements, our technology, our weaknesses." Jack turned toward the camera and smiled. "Humans can't help it. We learn fast. And right now," he pressed a final button. "I'm learning that you've got other prisoners in this place." Gray's blood ran cold. Jack leaned in, eyes blazing. "I'm not leaving without them." The Silent Ones fall. They sent the Silent Ones. 3 of them. Towering, faceless, encased in matte black armor that seemed to drink in the light. No names, no voices. Only one purpose: eliminate threats deemed too dangerous for standard containment. They had never failed. Until now. Inside the command chamber, First Observer Gray watched the screen fingers clenching tighter with every heartbeat. The feed from testing Chamber 3 had gone black, overridden by a single static message. "Prisoner is active." The words blinked like a heartbeat. "He's escaped," Gray said, voice hollow. "He's adapting too quickly." His assistant looked equally shaken. "Shall I deploy sector-wide stasis fields?" "No, he'll have anticipated that by now." The doors hissed open behind them. The Silent Ones stepped inside like 3 executioners. They said nothing. They needed no instructions. "Find him," Gray ordered. "But be careful. This human, he's different." The lead Silent One gave a single nod and vanished into the corridor, with the others splitting into a triangulated search pattern. Meanwhile, Jack moved like smoke through the ventilation shafts. The aliens were tall, too tall for maintenance routes. Jack, at 6 feet, found these tunnels almost cozy. He slid, crouched, climbed, mapping every turn in his head. He wasn't just running. He was picking his battlefield. He had studied their patrol routes, how the facility pulsed with cycles of power. He'd read their systems like a language, and now he was writing his response. The first Silent One passed under a vent in Corridor 9B. Too smooth, too quiet. Jack waited, then dropped a small makeshift smoke bomb crafted from scavenged cleaning agents. It burst into a thick gray fog that overwhelmed the alien's optical sensors. Jack dropped with it. The alien turned just in time to catch a boot to the back of the head. 30 seconds later, the corridor was quiet again. Jack dragged pieces of the suit into the shadows. Too big to wear, but components very useful. In a different wing, the second Silent One encountered what looked like a crude tripwire trap. It paused, analyzing. Primitive, predictable. It bent to disable the device. That's when the real trap activated. The fire suppression system kicked on, blasting the hallway with pressurized foam, shorting the hunter's armor systems, and coating its motion sensors in thick sludge. Jack's voice crackled from a nearby speaker. Rule 1 of asymmetric warfare. The obvious trap is never the real trap. The second Silent One scrambled up, only to be taken down by an elbow drop from a ceiling pipe. Silence followed. 2 down. The third one was smarter. It moved cautiously through the facility's power core, a vast chamber of humming reactors and flickering lights. It kept its sensors rotating, checking blind spots. A faint clang. It turned. Nothing. Another sound closer, then one behind. Jack's voice filled the chamber, calm and patient. You know what humans did before we had weapons. Another clang. We didn't chase prey. Clink. We followed it for days, weeks. The Silent One spun systems heating. We didn't kill fast, we waited. A blur in the shadows. A vent hissed. We called it persistence hunting. The Silent One charged but ran headfirst into a trap door that slammed shut behind it. In the dark, Jack dropped in, silent as falling dust. The battle was brutal, fast, and one-sided. The final Silent One hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the facility. Back in the control chamber, Gray stared at the blank screens. They're gone, his assistant said. All 3. Gray's hands trembled. They were bred to fight the worst predators in the galaxy, and they were hunted like animals. He looked at the footage of Jack disappearing into the lower levels. He's not just escaping, Gray whispered. He's searching. The realization hit like a gut punch. This human was not running. He was coming for something. Down below, Jack paused to catch his breath. He'd stitched together armor fragments into a makeshift exoharness. Not perfect, but enough to reinforce his spine, shoulders, and absorb impact. He crouched by a terminal and replayed the facility's prisoner manifest. Thousands of entries, species, cell locations, status. Many were still alive. He tapped. The screen uploaded a data burst into the facility's comms. Encrypted maybe, but context was everything. To everyone still breathing, you've been tested, broken, studied. I've been there, you want out. Help me burn this place down. Jack stood, no longer a prisoner. Now, he was the spark. Project Perfect Soldier. The air changed as Jack entered the lower levels. No more sterile labs or polished testing chambers. Here the walls were darker, older, reinforced with metals he didn't recognize. The hum of energy was deeper, more menacing, vibrating through his bones like distant thunder. He passed through a sealed door using a stolen security token carved from the helmet of a Silent One. The lock hissed open, revealing a room bathed in eerie blue light. His boots echoed on the metal floor. And then he saw them. Rose-no towers of transparent tubes stretched from floor to ceiling. Each one contained a life form suspended in glowing fluid. Some were massive, armored with tusks and claws. Others were slender with enlarged craniums and twitching cybernetic implants. They were still alive, barely. Wires ran from their skulls and spines feeding data into pulsing machines along the walls. A screen blinked to life as Jack approached. Project Perfect Soldier. He scrolled through the files, subject logs, medical data, psychological breakdowns, biochemical scans. Subject 2247 high aggression, unstable at baseline. Subject 3891 exceptional tactical awareness. Low emotional response. Subject 4472 regenerative traits. Compatible with hybridization. Jack's fists clenched. This wasn't science. This was butchery disguised in clinical language. The next screen made his breath catch. Chamber 5000 human integration status, awaiting activation. An empty tube, labeled Jack Stone. They hadn't just been testing him, they had been preparing him. A voice echoed behind him. Impressive, isn't it? Jack turned. First Observer Gray stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 armored guards. But this Gray was different, no longer rattled or fearful. His posture was straighter, his eyes sharp. You weren't just observing me, Jack said slowly. You were customizing me. Gray nodded, stepping further into the room. Individually, humans are mediocre. No natural armor, no telepathic ability, no enhanced biology, and yet he gestured toward the screen, now playing a video of Jack's escape, his combat maneuvers, his resourcefulness. You overcome, you adapt, you refuse to die. Jack's voice was like steel, and you wanted to bottle that. Not bottle, integrate. Gray's smile was almost reverent. With the traits of the strongest from across the galaxy, imagine a being who learns like a human, heals like a Jurek, thinks like a Sithari, and kills like a Brakton. That's what the collective needs. To fight what? Jack demanded. What war are you so afraid of you'd build monsters to face it? Gray's gaze hardened. Something is coming, a force ancient and unstoppable. The Council believes only through forced evolution can we hope to survive. And enslaving thousands is your answer. It is survival. Jack's voice dropped, dangerous and quiet. You people never understood humans. Gray's eyes narrowed. Enlighten me. Jack held up a small circular device in his hand. It blinked green. I've been transmitting everything, Jack said flatly. Every test, every lama, every prisoner manifest, every disgusting experiment, all of it sent to every node in this facility. Gray's smile faltered. You forget, Jack added, stepping forward. I've read your language. I know who you're holding. You didn't just kidnap random warriors. You took ambassadors, royal heirs, spiritual leaders, 50 species. The alarm blared. This time it wasn't from a local breach. It was global. Warning, the AI announced. Multiple containment breaches detected. Subject release protocols initiated. What did you do? Gray whispered. Jack's smile returned, but this time there was no warmth in it. I told you, he said, I'm good at jailbreaks. From above, the sounds came roars, shouts, the crackle of broken energy fields. The facility shook. You built your perfect soldier program inside a powder keg, Jack said, backing toward a maintenance hatch. Now you get to see what happens when the fire starts. You'll die in the chaos, Gray spat. Jack vanished into the shadows, voice echoing. Maybe, but you'll live long enough to watch everything burn. The Great Uprising. The facility burned from within. Not with fire, but with chaos. Alarms wailed. Automated turrets spun uselessly, blinded by Jack's earlier virus. Security droids malfunctioned, turning in circles or firing at shadows. Doors sealed and unsealed at random. The AI was choking on corrupted code. And through the storm walked Jack Stone. At his back, an army of the discarded. The first to join him was Rock, a hulking creature with skin like granite and eyes like polished coal. He had once been a siege beast used by his people to batter starship hulls with his fists. Now he followed Jack like a loyal brother. The armory is 3 levels up, Jack shouted over the cacophony. That's where they'll regroup. Rock grunted. Then we get there before they do. Behind them, dozens more emerged aliens with wings, claws, horns, and bioengineered implants. Each had suffered under the collective scalpel. Each was ready to fight. But Jack didn't just give them freedom. He gave them a plan. In a side corridor, another group emerged, led by Blue Wind, a tall, 4-armed tactician whose people had once ruled 10 star systems before being annexed. She approached Jack briskly. Choke points ahead, 3 of them, automated turrets and 20 guards minimum. A direct assault is suicide. Then we don't go direct, Jack replied. He gathered his growing squad, Swift, an insectoid speedster once used as a courier drone. Blue Wind, his strategist. Rock, the hammer. Others, spies, healers, engineers, even one who could manipulate magnetic fields. They weren't just warriors. They were assets. The collective tried to combine your powers by force, Jack told them. We're going to do it willingly. They nodded, because they believed. Not in the plan, in him. The assault began not with blasters, but with diversion. Swift's team darted through the corridor, triggering sensors. Guards focused on the decoys. Meanwhile, Blue Wind coordinated a flanking route. And Rock, he didn't take the hallway. He smashed through the wall. Debris exploded outward. Jack dove in through the breech, rifle up, flanking the stunned guards. Precision strikes, non-lethal, but final. He moved like a whirlwind of muscle and fury. Turrets activated, then shorted. The magnetic alien behind Jack nodded. Your crude machines hate polarity inversion. Crude works, Jack said, grinning. Minutes later, the armory was theirs. Rows of alien weapons lined the walls. Pulse rifles, disruptor blades, kinetic cannons. Jack didn't stop to admire. He handed them out like candy on Halloween. Take what fits. We have 5 minutes max. Blue Wind activated a terminal. They're rerouting guards from the upper research decks. We've got maybe one window before they reinforce. Jack nodded. Time to weaponize hope. He uploaded another burst from his wrist comp. A blueprint of the facility appeared on a central display. Here's the plan, he said, pointing. Non-combatants escape through the lower tunnels. Swift's team is guiding them now. Everyone else, we go up and hit the command center. Rock rumbled. Won't they expect that? They expect chaos, Jack replied. We give them coordination. A beat. Let's move. As the squad stormed the upper decks, they encountered stiffer resistance, full platoons of armored guards. But the collective had trained for tactics, not improvisation. Jack's army didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors. Every hall was a kill zone. Every corner held a trick. One alien melted walls with acid. Another jammed weapons with electromagnetic pulses. Blue Wind predicted enemy ambushes with eerie accuracy. They didn't overpower the guards. They outthought them. By the time they reached the main control sector, the enemy had been reduced to knots of panicked squads defending meaningless checkpoints. Inside the command room, Gray watched it all unfold. This is impossible, he whispered. They're acting like a unified force. His assistant turned pale. The human taught them how. Outside, Jack gathered his squad. Before them, the central control door. Reinforced. Locked. Electrified. Behind it, the final layer between them and freedom or destruction. Rock stepped forward. Permission to nod. Jack clapped his shoulder, with extreme prejudice. Burn the lab, save the galaxy. The outer shell of the facility groaned like a wounded beast. Deep underground, ancient supports cracked under pressure. Hallways once pristine were now cratered, scorched and bathed in red emergency lights. The uprising had spread to every level. Jack stood in the central control hub, sweat dripping down his jawline armor, scorched and cracked, a borrowed alien rifle slung over his back. Behind him, his team spread out, Blue Wind on the system's console, Rock guarding the door, Swift pacing like a blur, antennas twitching. The holomap above them flickered. Above ground, 5 massive ships now hovered in low orbit. The collective's main battle fleet. Each ship was a city-sized behemoth covered in armor, bristling with weapons, and powered by a core capable of vaporizing continents. Initiating ground force deployment, Blue Wind reported. They're coming in heavy. Good, Jack replied, checking the charge on his weapon. Let them in, just a little deeper. He pulled up the reactor core diagram. The schematics were alien, but Jack had spent hours crawling through vents, observing engineers studying energy flow. This isn't just a power grid, he said aloud. This is a cage built from gravity. Blue Wind blinked. Come again. They built this entire complex on top of a planetary fault line, Jack explained, using a modified singularity chamber to keep everything stable. But if we collapse it in the right way, it becomes a gravity well, she finished, realization dawning. Jack nodded. One big enough to drag down whatever's above it. Swift snapped to attention, even their ships. All of them, Jack said. If we overload the core, let the pressure breach, everything within 20 clicks gets pulled straight into hell. Rock chuckled deep and gravelly. You are one dangerous human. Jack smirked. You should see me on my day off. The facility shook violently as the first collective dropships breached the perimeter. Jack's comm crackled to life. This is Fire Team Delta. We're pinned near the cryogenics wing. Swift go, Jack ordered. Take the corridor bypass. I'm already gone, Swift said, vanishing mid-sentence. Blue Wind's hands flew across the console. They're trying to reassert control over internal systems. Can they? Not unless they recode the entire OS. Your virus is still replicating. Good, Jack said. Buy me 3 minutes. He sprinted down the side hallway toward the core chamber, his exo harness clicking with every step. It had once held him prisoner. Now it was his shield. The core chamber was a temple of power. Blue light pulsed from the singularity cage suspended at its center, held in place by gravitational nodes the size of tanks. Energy danced along the metal lattice like lightning trapped in a bottle. Jack accessed the manual control panel, already half melted from prior sabotage. No safeguards, no failsafe. Just like he wanted. Rock's voice buzzed in. Jack, they're breaching? We've got contact across all fronts. Hold them. They brought a damn tank. Then crack it open and use it. Jack keyed in the final sequence. Power surged, lights flickered, pressure increased. The chamber screamed. In the command center, Blue Wind's eyes widened. Energy spike in the core, Jack. You overloaded the field, stabilizers. That's the point. She looked at the readings again. Jack, it's growing faster than expected. How fast? She hesitated. Too fast. In orbit, the collective fleet commander narrowed his eyes at the disturbance below. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Wipe the facility clean." His second-in-command paled. "Sir, our ground forces are still inside. No more mistakes." But before he could issue a second command, the flagship trembled. Below them, Earth's crust split. Jack ran full tilt back toward the surface corridors, collapsing behind him, ceiling beams falling like guillotines. Ahead, a lift was still active, powered by a backup generator. He leapt inside as the doors slammed shut. In the evac tunnel, Rock and Blue Wind ushered survivors toward hidden shuttles. Swift reappeared carrying a wounded alien child. "All accounted for?" Jack asked, emerging from the smoke like a specter. "Not all," Rock growled, "but most." "That'll have to do." Overhead, the mountain roared. The sky cracked, and then the ships began to fall. The singularity exploded not outward but inward, a reverse implosion that sucked the core, then the walls, then the entire mountain into a spiraling abyss of gravity. The collective's main fleet tried to retreat, but it was too late. The gravity well caught their lowest ships first, dragging them in like insects into a black hole. One by one, the behemoths collapsed under their own mass. Explosions lit the sky like artificial stars. In a distant bunker, Jack watched it all on a stolen view screen, arms crossed, chest heaving, eyes hard. Goodbye, Project Perfect Soldier. A human legacy. The smoke had settled. What was once a hidden fortress carved beneath a mountain was now a crater, black and silent and churning, with residual gravity tremors. There were no screams, no alarms, no ships in orbit. The sky was clear, because there was nothing left to challenge it. In the distance, on a ridge overlooking the smoldering void, Jack Stone stood, armor-scratched, body bruised, but spine straight. Around him were the freed. Hundreds of aliens representing 50 worlds gathered in silence. Some carried makeshift weapons. Others wore scavenged gear from fallen guards. But all eyes were on the man who had led them here. Behind Jack, Blue Wind stepped forward, her 4 hands working a control panel built into her forearm. The data burst worked. Every planet with a representative here received full records of the collective's experiments. It's spreading faster than light. Beside her, Rock rumbled in approval. "Now the whole galaxy knows what they did." Jack nodded. "Good, now they can choose what comes next." A voice, old, calm, and deep, spoke from the crowd. An elder, alien robes tattered but eyes sharp, stepped forward. He was once a spiritual leader on his world before being taken. "The prophecy," the elder said quietly. "We were told that one would rise. A warrior who would unite the broken, defy the powerful, and bring justice to the stars, not through domination, but through unity." Jack raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't a prophecy," he said with a wry grin. "That's just what humans do." The crowd chuckled. Jack continued, "We don't win because we're the strongest or the smartest. Hell, we're barely even the most advanced." He looked out over the sea of faces. "But we adapt, we learn, we find the cracks, we take pain and turn it into purpose." He took a breath. "And when someone comes for our people, we don't stop until the job is done." A hush fell across the survivors. Blue Wind broke the silence. "What happens now?" Jack looked up at the stars. "Now," he said, "we rebuild. We warn others. We find every last collective lab and tear them apart piece by piece." Rock pounded a fist into his open palm. "And if they try to strike back?" Jack's smile was cold. "Then we teach them what happens when you try to cage a species born in chaos." A new noise echoed through the valley, one of hope. Engines. Ships, dozens descended from orbit. Not collective warships, but civilian freighters, medical transports, old freighters, repurposed for emergency response. They came from worlds across the sector. Planets that had once feared humans now came because one had saved their own. The first ship landed, and from it emerged representatives, leaders, soldiers, scientists who had received the data and believed it. One approached Jack and saluted with 2 fists over his chest. "You have allies," the alien said. "Many of us now. We are ready." Jack nodded. "You're not ready to follow me," he said. "You're ready to stand with me." The alien's face split in a grin. "So, what do we call this?" Jack looked out over the rising tide of ships, warriors, refugees, and now rescuers. Then he answered, "Call it a resistance." Hours later, aboard a makeshift command center on one of the civilian ships, Jack stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. Dots blinked red for collective controlled zones, green for planets confirmed to be rallying to the cause. There were more green dots now than anyone could have hoped. Blue Wind entered datapad in hand, words spreading faster than even the collective can respond. Their outer rim facilities are panicking. Several have already been abandoned. They're used to fear, Jack said. They never planned for hope. She studied him a moment. You realize what you are to them now, don't you? A threat. No, she said, a symbol. Jack turned back to the map. I didn't want to be a symbol, I just wanted to get out alive. And you did, but you didn't leave alone. He said nothing. But in his chest, he felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the legacy, not just of survival, but of defiance. Before the ship left orbit, Jack stood once more at the edge of the crater. Where it all began, he carried no weapons, just memory. He knelt and pressed his hand into the scorched earth. For everyone they took, he said, then stood. For everyone they didn't break. And finally, for everyone who's about to join us. He turned. The ramp of the ship hissed open. He stepped aboard. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, had a new future waiting.